Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere quiet, old, and full of little mysteries just the way we like it. You're standing on the riverbanks of ancient Nubia, deep in the dark belly of the night, where the Nile whispers to itself in the reeds and frogs trade gossip with unseen owls. Your feet sink into warm mud. The sky above is cracked open with stars, but there's no city glow, no traffic hum, no phone buzzing for your attention, just a thin sliver of moon, barely clinging to the horizon. To your left, the silhouette of a fisherman bends over a net. He's moving slowly, methodically, like this exact dance has played out for centuries. Because it has. These are the Nubian river folk, whose craft doesn't involve shouting or diesel engines, just moonlight, silence, and names whispered to nets like they're old friends, names that change with the lunar cycle, nets that only work on certain nights, superstition, maybe they knew something we forgot. You probably won't survive this if you're hoping for a fast-paced pirate tale or dramatic shark battles. Spoiler alert. The only thing being harpooned tonight is your attention span. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are, because somewhere out there, the moon's probably doing something weird. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crouch beside the fisherman, fingers brushing the net. It's not just rope. Its hand-twisted reed cord dyed a muted shade of river gray, designed to disappear once submerged. You see a faint tag of leather near the bottom, too soft and worn to read. It's not there for instructions. It's a name. In Nubian dialect, it roughly translates to night that breathes slowly. Not net, not dragline, not model, exonturu, just a feeling. The men work in near silence, but they hum just under their breath. Low, slow syllables that seem to rise with the mist. You try to count how many nets they carry, but they're folded and bound tight, each with the knots you couldn't untangle if your life depended on it. One is wrapped in blue cloth, one has faint red stripes, another smells strongly of some kind of fermented palm mash. You ask quietly how they know which net to use. An elder nods toward the sky. She tells us, he says, pointing at the moon. Not dramatically, just matter of fact. Like, you might point at the microwave when someone asks how you reheated the stew. Tonight, it's a waning crescent. That means only certain nets can be used. Ones with tighter mesh, ones that glide rather than drop. The fish know the difference. Apparently, you'd raise an eyebrow, but you've already lost track of what century this moment belongs to. Historians still argue whether these fishermen were being scientifically intuitive or deeply symbolic. Some suggest they noticed how fish patterns changed with the tides and lunar gravity. Others think it was all wrapped in belief that different moon phases brought different spirits into the river. Either way, the behavior stuck, woven into the routine like a chant. A fringe theory unproven, but strangely compelling, says that one net in particular was reserved not for fishing, but for catching dreams, that when draped over a sleeper's chest, it could help interpret lunar visions. You wonder if they're pulling your leg, but then, why is the net stitched with ochre thread shaped into looping figures? You swear it looks like a sleeping man and a crescent blade above him. The river laps gently. The first net is unfurled and cast like a whisper. It doesn't splash. It just vanishes, as if the water swallows it out of respect. You look at the man's hands, calloused. Yes, but his touch is precise, reverent. The net's movements echo old music, and you start to feel it in your bones. A mosquito whines by your ear. You slap at it too loudly. 3 heads turn. The eldest raises one eyebrow but says nothing. The mood returns. The moonlight catches his cheekbone just as he tugs the net back with a practiced flick. One fish, silver and sleepy, no flailing. It surrenders. Some fish seem to know when it's their night, or maybe it's just tired. Either way, the fisherman murmurs something in Nubian and drops it into a shallow wooden crate. The crate isn't just for carrying fish, it's inscribed with faded glyphs you can't decipher. A local archivist once speculated they may reference a now extinct dialect that categorized fish based on their behavior during moonrise. Aggressive risers, deep lurkers, the kind that vanish during eclipses. Maybe that's overthinking it. Or maybe not. As you rise to stretch your legs, you notice a net still coiled near the edge of the firelight. It's different. Thicker twine, heavy with a copper tag. You ask why no one's using it tonight. The fisherman just shrugs. Wrong moon, he says, and that's the end of the discussion. You sit back down, letting the moment settle. The hum returns. The moon shifts just a little higher, and slowly, you begin to understand this isn't just fishing, it's choreography. A slow-motion prayer, a nighttime agreement between sky and water. The nets are named because names matter. Because when you name something, you know when not to use it, when to wait, when to listen. Not every tool needs to be used just because you have it. Some tools are seasonal. Some tools are sacred. Some are just waiting for their phase to come back around. The river agrees. It keeps flowing. You reach for the next net, the one they call new moon. It's not particularly eye-catching, no flashy colors, no carved embellishments, no stitched icons. In fact, you almost miss it entirely, because the thing is practically invisible against the dark earth. That's the point. It's the net used during the new moon, when the sky is at its darkest, and even the stars seem to whisper, "Don't draw attention." The fishermen say this net doesn't hunt, it listens. It's made from reeds stripped thin and soaked in ash-dyed water until they turn a ghostly gray-black. Blending perfectly with the night river, you touch it and feel nothing sharp. Nothing sticky. It's soft, almost like old cloth. You ask how it works, and the young man nearest to you grins. You don't work it. You trust it, he says, as if that's supposed to clarify everything. The new moon net is narrow, barely more than shoulder width. It's designed for the river's edge, where shallow fish drift close to feed in the reeds. Unaware that something's hanging still just above the waterline, this net doesn't get dragged or tossed. It's placed delicately, silently, like laying down a blanket over a child who's already asleep. Historians generally agree this kind of fishing low movement, passive, almost meditative dates back at least 4 dozen years in Nile communities. But what puzzles them is how finely tuned these nets are to lunar darkness. There's little written record explaining the method, just oral fragments passed from father to son. Some scholars argue it was a response to fish behavior. Others claim it was a response to something older, something unseen. One Nubian proverb simply goes, "On the darkest nights, the river sees you first." Fringe theorists have a different take entirely. They believe the net's placement during new moons wasn't just for concealment. They think it was a sort of offering a moonless ritual in which fish were allowed to choose capture instead of being hunted. One researcher even compared the net's design to burial shrouds, noting the nearly identical knotting technique. You try not to spiral too far into that thought. The elder places the net near a bend in the river, where the reeds sway in hushed agreement. He holds it with both hands like a rolled-up scroll, then slowly unravels it. There's no splash, just a barely audible shh as it melts into the surface. No weights, no pulls, just time. You settle into the sand, listening. Somewhere in the distance, a frog croaks like it's late for something important. You wonder if any of this would work in daylight, if the net would even catch algae without the moon's absence blessing it first. One of the younger boys sneaks over and offers you a small, hand-painted disc. It's about the size of a bottle cap and covered in tiny scratches. "This is for the net," he says. "We keep one for each catch." You flip it over. On the back is a faint carving of a new moon. A blank circle. He explains they used to track catches not with numbers, but with moon tokens, 1 token per fish. At the end of the season, they'd match the net's name to the shape of the moon on the tokens. Some families believed the fish themselves told stories based on the moon phase they were caught under. If you caught an orange fish during the new moon, it meant good crops. If it was a ghost perch, it meant someone in the village had a secret that would come out by spring. Superstitious nonsense. Probably. But the fish tokens are real. Museums have them. Some are made of shell, others out of clay. Some are shaped like slivers, others full round moons. There's even one mysterious set carved from ebony, found buried in a crescent-shaped pit in northern Nubia. Historians still don't know if that was a calendar, a tally system, or a warning. Back by the bank, the net shifts. Not a yank, more like a nudge. The elder doesn't move yet. He waits. You're impatient on his behalf, but he simply taps the edge of his sandal in the dirt, counting heartbeats. Then, With a smooth tug, he draws the net back. Two fish, one small, one smaller, they flop without drama. He doesn't celebrate. He doesn't speak. He just nods at the moon's absence, as if the void above deserves credit for the gift. You lean in. The smaller fish has a strange shimmer to it, almost translucent. You swear you can see the moon reflected in its eye, even though there is no moon tonight. Someone mutters the name of the fish, Sahra ibn, or child of night. These fish are only caught during the new moon, and only with this net. Locals believe their meat tastes different, lighter, sometimes sour. Some say they're not real fish at all, but water spirits disguising themselves as food. You know, just to mess with people. There's a debate among ichthyologists about whether this species even exists, or if it's just a juvenile form of a common perch that happens to wander closer to shore on moonless nights. No one can replicate the catch in a lab, so we may never know. The fish goes into a basket without ceremony. The net is rinsed, folded, and dried carefully. Not dropped, not wrung. The elder whispers to it. You pretend not to notice. Then he passes it to the youngest boy in the group. It's his turn to carry it home. A big responsibility. The boy looks proud. The net droops over his arm like a sleepy cat. You ask how long the net's lasted. The elder shrugs. 3 boats, maybe 4. You're confused. Boats. That's how we count time. He explains. A net lasts through so many boats. When it outlives its 4th, we bury it. Bury it. Apparently, this is normal. A net that's served its time gets wrapped in palm leaves and sunk into the river with stones shaped like moon slivers. Not burned, not thrown away, given back. You ask if they mark the spot. No, he says. The moon remembers. You think he's joking? He's not. You glance up. The moon's not there. But somehow, she still feels like she's watching. You stay a while longer at the riverbank, half asleep now, lulled by the slow hush of the reeds and the wet, dragging sound of another net being unfurled. This one looks different. Its threads glimmer faintly, like someone stitched river starlight into it. Tiny beads, no bigger than lentils, are knotted along its edges. You blink. Are they metal, shell, glass? The net is for the waxing moon. When the sliver of light begins to grow again, according to the fisherman, fish become more curious under a waxing sky. So the net is designed to shimmer just a little, enough to catch a wandering eye, enough to make a fish wonder. Is that food? Is that danger? Is that the reflection of the moon or something crawling just beneath it? The beads are smoothed and polished, each tied at regular intervals with what looks like horsehair. You reach out and flick one. It clicks against another bead softly, like wind chimes underwater. A nearby boy hisses at you through his teeth. You withdraw your hand. Historians have written about these shimmer nets before. They appear in rock art and in one fragmented scroll found near Aswan, which mentions nets that carry moon pieces sewn along their fingers. There's debate over whether these additions were symbolic, perhaps linked to lunar fertility rituals, or purely functional, intended to dazzle fish as they swam by. Either way, this particular net is only used during the 3rd night of the waxing phase. Why the 3rd? No one's sure. The fishermen say it's just when the shimmer works best. One fringe theory claims the net was inspired by the Nile catfish's own reflective scales. The idea was to trick the fish into swimming toward a mirrored decoy. Some scholars find that laughable. Others suggest it was a way of syncing with the moon's rhythm to cast light upon light. As one old Nubian saying goes, the fishermen don't argue. They just wait for the clouds to clear and for that sickle of moon to gain its edge. When it does, the net goes out, not cast like a trap, but stretched slowly between 2 narrow boats. Dug-out canoes barely wide enough for a man to sit cross-legged. The net dips just below the surface, its beads clicking faintly in rhythm with the ripples. The sound is eerie, like whispers with no language. You catch yourself holding your breath. You notice that only 2 men are handling this net, not 3, not a boy in sight. You ask why, and the older of the 2 responds, too many eyes spoil the shimmer. You nod. Like you understand. You don't, but you respect the mood. And then something strange happens. The beads on the net begin to hum, not loudly, but enough that you can feel it in your jaw. You glance at the others. No one reacts. Is it the wind? The reeds? A trick of the river's current? Or is it The net. A fringe tale comes to mind, one passed down by Nubian grandmothers who weren't supposed to fish, but always knew the most about it. They said that certain nets sang back when the river approved of their use. That, if you could hear the song, it meant you were standing in the right spot, at the right moon, at the right time, and if you couldn't hear it, you weren't ready to fish. The sound fades, replaced by the soft flapping of water against the canoes, then a small splash, then another. The shimmer net is pulled back, and there they are, 4 fish, their silver bodies blinking like distant stars. One of them wiggles, sending a ripple across the moon's reflection, momentarily dividing the sky in two. No one claps, no one smiles, just calm nods and a slow, practiced tying of the net's edge. One fish has a mark on its belly, a curved scar that forms almost a perfect crescent. You point it out, and the younger man grins. That one, he says, is already marked for the full moon. You ask what that means. Some fish get caught more than once. He explains, they always come back on a different moon. You're about to ask if he's being poetic, but he cuts you off. Same fish, same scar, but it swims different when the light is fuller. There's no confirmed scientific evidence of this. Of course, fish migration and return behavior in the Nile is notoriously hard to study. But still, some fishermen swear they recognize old catches. They say the fish come back smarter, slipperier, hungrier, or more patient. You follow them back to the shore, where the net is carefully laid over a rack of bent reeds to dry. The beads are adjusted, clicked, and yes, whispered to. You realize each net has its own melody. This one, barely audible, sounds like the kind of lullaby you'd hum to an infant who's already half asleep. The boy from before is now crouching beside a small carved box. He opens it and pulls out several tiny moon tokens this time, shaped like crescents with etched dots on one side. For each fish caught, he scratches a dot on the token with a sharp shell fragment. These are waxing tokens. He explains, different from the blank circle ones. When all the dots are filled, the token is retired. What happens to them after that? We throw them in the river, he says, or hang them from fig trees. Why fig trees? He shrugs. Because they grow slow, and they remember things. That's oddly comforting. The moon has risen higher now, and the shimmer net's glow begins to fade. Its job is done for the night. The men begin packing up. They leave nothing behind, not even footprints. The mud reclaims it all. As you trail behind, you wonder what else the river remembers, which moons it prefers, which nets it favors, and whether, somewhere in the deep, a fish with a crescent scar is watching you back. You shift your weight on the sandy bank as a nearby fisherman pulls out a curious wooden bucket, its surface worn smooth from years of use. It's carved from a single gourd, hollowed out and sealed with beeswax, decorated with faded tribal patterns tracing moon phases and river shapes. This is no ordinary container. It's the fisherman's ritual bucket, used before every cast. You ask what it's for. The elder smiles, then dips his fingers into the bucket's dark, murky water. He scoops up a handful, letting it drip slowly back. The river's smell, he says simply, sounds poetic. Maybe too poetic. The bucket contains water taken from a sacred bend in the Nile, where the currents shift unpredictably. Before any net goes out, the fishermen splash this water over their hands, their nets, even their faces, part superstition, part sensory preparation. The idea is to mask human scent and confuse the fish, or so they say. Historians still argue whether this practice is a relic of early sensory camouflage or simply a spiritual ritual meant to honor the river goddess. Some archaeologists suggest it's one of the earliest known examples of what we might now call olfactory stealth. Others insist it's more about respect and acknowledgement that the river is alive and watching. You dip your own hand in. The water smells earthy, thick with mud and a faint hint of lotus blossoms. You imagine this smell might mingle with the cool night air, forming an invisible veil over the fisherman's movements. The elder grins knowingly and nods. The river knows who belongs, he says, and who doesn't. You wonder if that means the river also judges. There's a fringe tale passed among Nubian storytellers that the river sometimes rejects a fisherman, letting his nets tear, or sending crocodiles to warn him away. Maybe it's just bad luck, or maybe it's the river's way of saying, Not tonight. Next, the men take their nets and gently dip them in the bucket's water before the cast. The wetting supposedly softens the fibers, making them less visible and more pliable. You watch as the net absorbs the murky liquid, darkening and slickening. It almost seems to breathe, pulsing with a quiet life. You'd think all this soaking would weaken the nets, but they say the opposite is true. The water makes the nets last longer. Ancient tests on similar nets found in riverbeds support this, showing that the Nile's mud and mineral content preserves the fibers better than dry air. You get the impression that this bucket is more than a tool. It's a silent participant in the ritual, a kind of ambassador between man and river. Historians debate if this practice influenced fishing rituals in other ancient cultures along major rivers. Some suggest a shared origin, tracing back to prehistoric times when humans first learned to manipulate water and shadow. Others see it as a uniquely Nubian custom, deeply tied to their relationship with the Nile's unpredictable moods. As the fishermen prepare to cast their nets, one of the younger boys sings softly a chant that mentions the moon phases, the river's patience, and the fish's fleeting dance. The words are indecipherable to you, but the tone feels like a gentle coaxing, a lullaby for the water. You watch the nets glide silently into the river. Each splash is muffled by the damp air. Each ripple carries a whispered promise. You're struck by how much of this tradition is about subtlety, about blending, respecting, and listening rather than conquering. It's a stark contrast to the hurried, noisy fishing methods you've seen elsewhere. The night deepens. Somewhere nearby, a bird calls out a lone trumpet in the dark. You inhale deeply, letting the bucket's scent linger in your nose. This moment, you realize, is not just about catching fish. It's about understanding the rhythm of life, the dance between earth, water, and sky. You wonder if you'll ever be invited to join the ritual again. Probably not. But for now, you feel privileged just to watch. The night air feels heavier as the fishermen reach for a net unlike any other, the one they call the full moon curse net. It's large and circular, a web of thick rope knotted tight and dipped in river mud, giving it a reddish-brown color. Red clay knots are tied along its edges, each knot dense and rough as ancient beads. You can almost hear a warning in the way the net seems to sag under its own weight, reluctant to be lifted. No one dares touch it except the eldest brother in each fishing family. And even then, only on nights when the moon is full and bright. You ask why it's called a curse net. The elder's eyes narrow, and he leans in, voice dropping to a whisper. Because it carries the moon's anger, he says, it calls fish in trouble both. Historians have recorded mentions of cursed nets across several Nile cultures, but few describe one as literally tied with red clay. This particular detail has sparked debate. Was it protective, a warning, or some kind of early red flag to ward off spirits? There's an old tale, maybe more superstition than fact, about a fisherman who cast this net during a full moon and caught not fish, but a giant crocodile tooth tangled in the knots. Soon after, his village was said to suffer a plague of strange illnesses and bad luck for 7 moons. Whether this is true or not, the story has cemented the net's sinister reputation. You notice a faint, dry smell of clay and something like burnt incense clinging to the knots. It's enough to make your skin crawl. Still, the net is carefully coiled and ready. Waiting for the right moonrise, you watch the eldest brother approach the riverbank, his hand steady but respectful. He doesn't rush. The net slips quietly from his grip and spreads like a spider's web across the water. As it sinks, the red knots blur with the river mud, disappearing in the murky depths. The water churns faintly. You sense an unseen weight, like the moon itself is pressing down on the current. The fishermen stand back, silent. It's a sacred moment, heavy with both hope and fear. You ask if anyone has ever refused to cast the net. The elder nods slowly. Many times, he says, the moon decides when it's safe. We do not. The net's design isn't just practical. The circular shape matches the full moon's face, and some say the red knots represent the moon's blood, the danger of its brightest nights. Scholars debate whether the red clay was a form of early chemical treatment to strengthen the net, or if it was purely symbolic. Some fringe experts suggest the clay had insect-repelling properties, protecting the fishermen from mosquitoes that breed during full moons. Others believe the knots were charms, woven to trap bad luck alongside the fish. You think about the balance the fishermen maintain between respect for nature and the practical needs of survival. The curse net embodies that tension perfectly. The night grows quieter. You watch the water, waiting for a sign. Suddenly, a thrashing. A single large fish caught in the net struggles against the weight. It's silver-scaled with black spots, a prize catch. But the struggle seems fierce, almost desperate. The eldest brother gently pulls the net toward on shore. The fish's flailing slows. When it's finally free, the fisherman dips it in the ritual bucket water and murmurs a blessing. Good catch, but mind the moon, he says, half smiling. She watches all. You shiver. Despite the warmth of the night, the full moon shines high, casting long shadows on the river. You wonder if the curse is real or just a story told to keep the young respectful. Either way, the full moon net is a reminder. Sometimes, the tools we use come with unseen costs. You lean closer as the fishermen begin to uncoil a net. Unlike any other you've seen tonight, the crescent net. Its shape mimics the slender, curved moon hanging low above the river, a delicate arc rather than the usual rectangles or circles. Instead of being cast, it's hung between two boats, stretched tight like a harp string waiting to be played. You ask why they don't throw this one like the others. The elder shrugs, a shadow flickering across his face. Some nets are for fishing, some are for warning. The crescent net isn't meant to catch fish, at least not in the way you're used to. It's left motionless on the water's surface, positioned precisely to match the curve of the nearest river bend. The fishermen say it serves as a signal both to rival clans and to the spirits of the river. Historians have puzzled over the crescent net's purpose for decades. Was it a fishing method lost to time? A type of territorial marker, or perhaps an early form of communication? No clear consensus exists. Some anthropologists believe it was used to catch fish attracted by moonlight reflections. Others think it functioned as a barrier against unwanted water creatures or even crocodiles. The red clay painted on some crescents was likely a symbol of protection, though again, opinions vary. The fishermen aren't interested in academic debates. Their focus is on the river and the moon's shifting shape. You watch as the net hangs silently between two canoes, the pale moonlight casting long shadows over the water. The surface ripples gently, catching glimpses of stars and the faint outline of the net's curve. Suddenly, a low whistle breaks the quiet, a signal from upstream. The fishermen stiffen, eyes scanning the darkness. You ask what it means. A visitor, the elder replies, or a warning. The crescent net serves as a peaceful warning sign. Here be guardians. No fishing beyond this point. No crossing without respect. This tradition has sparked debate among historians. 2. Some argue that it was an early territorial demarcation tool between Nubian fishing clans, while others suggest it held spiritual significance, marking sacred waters during the moon's crescent phase. You shiver as the wind picks up, rustling the reeds and making the crescent net sway just slightly. It seems almost alive, like a silent sentinel watching over the river's secrets. Later, as the fishermen prepare to haul in the other nets, you notice a thin red thread tied to one edge of the crescent net. It's frayed, but still taut. You ask about it. The elder smiles wistfully. It's a lifeline, he says, for those who fish with their hearts. You nod, but you feel the weight of those words more than you understand them. As you turn to leave, you glance back one last time. The crescent net hangs perfectly still, reflecting the moon's shape, a quiet reminder that not all nets are meant to trap. Some are meant to protect, and in the river's endless dance with the moon, every curve has its meaning. The night deepens, and the scent of crushed indigo floats faintly on the air as the fishermen prepare another net. This one coated in a deep, inky blue paint that stains the rough fibers a shade as dark as the river's deepest shadows. This is the crocodile conundrum net, named for its mysterious history and the wild stories tangled around it. You've heard the tales. Some say this blue dye was meant to repel crocodiles, using the plant's natural bitterness and darkness as camouflage or a warning. Others say it did the opposite, attracting the massive reptiles instead, like a siren's call under the moon's watchful eye. Historians have been debating this for decades, and no one's found definitive proof either way. You notice a jagged scar etched into one of the gourds the fishermen used to scoop river water. It looks almost like a tooth mark, a jagged crescent shaped like a claw. The elder catches your eye and winks. "That's the story," he says. "One net, one bite." The story goes that a young fisherman once cast this indigo-coated net near a known crocodile nesting ground. Suddenly, a giant croc lunged, biting and tearing the net with a ferocity that left the man shaken but alive. Since then, the net was treated with a mix of respect and fear, dyed in deeper shades, and only used by the bravest or perhaps the most reckless. You watch the fishermen as they dip the net into the river, its dark blue fibers absorbing the water and blending into the night's shadows. The indigo glints faintly in the moonlight, almost like a secret language between man and beast. There is debate among scientists about whether the indigo plant's scent actually deters crocodiles, or if this is just a local legend, passed down as a cautionary tale. Some say the net's blue color confuses the reptiles in the murky water, making it harder for them to detect movement. Others argue the crocodiles see in infrared, so color wouldn't matter. You're about to ask the elder if the story's true when he suddenly gestures to a dark shape slipping beneath the water nearby. You catch your breath, a flash of scales and teeth disappearing as silently as a ghost. "Crocodile," the elder says softly. The river's reminder that some nets carry more than fish. You nod, swallowing your nervousness. The night has grown darker still, and the indigo net seems almost alive, pulsating with ancient secrets and warnings. The fishermen pack up silently, leaving no trace except the faint, earthy smell of indigo on their hands. You're left wondering whether the blue net was a clever invention or just another layer of the river's endless mystery. As you walk away, you catch a last glimpse of the scarred gourd, resting quietly among the reeds, a silent witness to the crocodile's bite and the fisherman's narrow escape. The river flows on, as indifferent as ever. The air thickens with humidity as the fishermen bring out a net unlike any you've encountered tonight, the one they call the humming net. It's woven from fine, tightly twisted reeds that seem to shimmer faintly under the moonlight. The net itself is taut, stretched carefully between two poles, and you swear you can hear a soft, almost imperceptible whistle, like the distant breath of the river itself. You ask if the net really hums, or if it's just your imagination running wild in the stillness. One of the elders chuckles softly. "The net sings when the wind and river speak the same language," he says, "but only those who listen can hear it." Historians have long puzzled over references to singing nets in ancient Nubian lore. Written records are scarce, and the few mentions in oral traditions are often dismissed as metaphor or myth. Yet, some scholars propose that the humming is caused by the tension in the net's fibers vibrating with the gentle river breeze, an early example of acoustic phenomenon tied to fishing. Fringe theories go further, suggesting the net might have been designed intentionally to produce sound, perhaps to attract or confuse certain fish species that rely on sound cues in murky waters. Others think the humming was a spiritual sign, an audible blessing from the river spirits, a signal that the night's catch would be bountiful. You lean in closer, eyes half closed, and suddenly hear it, a faint, haunting whistle that seems to ripple and fade with the passing breeze. It's soothing, hypnotic. You imagine the net as a living thing, breathing and singing with the river. The fishermen begin their work, casting the humming net carefully into the water. Unlike other nets, this one isn't pulled immediately. It's left to sit, suspended in the gentle current, like a quiet listener waiting for the river's secrets. After a while, a subtle vibration travels up the poles, and the net is drawn back in slowly. This time, the soft whistle grows louder for a moment, then fades away. As the catch is lifted, three slender fish with scales that catch the moonlight like polished glass. The fishermen handle their catch with reverence, their faces calm but expectant. You realize the humming net isn't just a tool, it's part instrument, part ritual, part mystery. The night deepens, and the humming fades into the background hum of the river and the rustling reeds. Somewhere, a bird calls softly, as if echoing the net's song. You sit back, feeling the gentle pulse of the net's melody linger in your mind, wondering if you'll ever hear anything quite like it again. The river's edge is quiet now, save for the occasional splash and the rustle of reeds. You notice the fishermen beginning to lay out a curious collection of smooth, flat stones, each carefully carved with delicate grooves and shapes resembling the phases of the moon. These are the moon-shaped fish-counting stones, an ancient system of keeping track of their catch, passed down through generations like sacred tokens. Each stone corresponds to a lunar phase, new moon, waxing crescent, full moon, waning gibbous, and so on. The fishermen place a stone beside their basket for every fish caught during the night, matching the fish's species or behavior to the moon phase carved on the stone. This method is not just a tally, it's a way of reading the river's story, a dialogue between the river, the moon, and those who depend on them. Historians have uncovered similar tallying methods in other ancient cultures, but the Nubian stones stand out for their explicit lunar symbolism. Some scholars believe this was the world's earliest form of a lunar calendar, used not just for fishing but also for planting crops, predicting floods, and timing religious ceremonies. Others argue the stones were practical counters, their moon shapes coincidental or decorative additions inspired by the night sky. There's lively debate among academics about whether the Nubians intentionally encoded their calendar in these stones, or if it evolved naturally from their deep spiritual and practical connection to the river's cycles. The truth is elusive, partly lost to time. But the stones themselves remain, silent witnesses. A fisherman picks up the stone carved with a waning crescent and sets it beside a particularly slippery fish known locally as the night dart. He murmurs the moon's name softly, as if invoking an ancient blessing, then adds the stone to the growing pile beside his catch. You ask what happens to the stones at the end of the fishing season. The elder explains that they're carefully stored and sometimes passed down as family heirlooms, each carrying stories of bountiful seasons or harsh droughts. Some stones are said to hold the luck of many successful nights, while others bear the weight of lean catches and difficult times. There's even a whispered story of a set of ebony stones, perfectly carved and buried beneath a crescent-shaped mound. No one knows why they were buried, but local legend links it to a great flood that stole the stars from the sky for a time. Scholars still debate whether this was a ritual to restore balance or a symbolic act of mourning. As you watch, the fishermen continue their work, placing stones gently beside each catch. The ritual feels like a quiet conversation with the moon, a way to honor the river's gifts and the night's labor. The smooth stones glint softly in the moonlight, each one a small, tactile echo of the sky above. You feel a deep sense of connection not just to these fishermen, but to the ancient rhythms that still pulse through the world. Hidden in plain sight, the counting stones remind you that human beings have long sought to measure time, not just in numbers, but in cycles of light and shadow. The river flows silently, carrying their stories downstream, as the moon watches from above unchanged. Yet forever entwined with the lives below, you settle deeper into the cool mud, the night air thick with the scent of wet earth and distant wood smoke. As the fishermen unveil a net, unlike any you've seen tonight, a torn and weathered mesh, its fibers threaded with thin copper strips and small animal bones delicately woven throughout. This is the net they buried like a king, a relic steeped in ritual, reverence, and layers of mystery that stretch back beyond memory. The story, as told by the eldest fisherman, begins long ago, during a time when the Nile swelled with such fury that it swallowed entire villages whole. Floodwaters raced like wild horses, carrying away crops, homes, and the stars themselves, or so the elders say. In the aftermath, the people were left grasping for hope in the darkness, struggling to find meaning amid loss. It was then that a special net was crafted not for catching fish, but to catch fate itself. This net was stitched with copper strips, prized for their protective and purifying qualities, as well as bones of river birds and small mammals, symbols of life, death, and the eternal cycle linking them. Every knot was tied with care, every thread infused with prayer. The copper shimmered faintly, even in the dim moonlight, as if holding traces of the sun's warmth. You watch in silence as the elder describes the ritual surrounding the net's burial. When a net outlived its usefulness or was damaged beyond repair, it was never simply discarded or burned. Instead, the fishermen prepared it for a sacred burial beneath a crescent-shaped mound near the riverbank. a place where the moon seemed to touch Earth, a liminal threshold between worlds. This burial was accompanied by songs, offerings of millet, dates, and palm wine, and the soft beating of drums, honoring the net as one would honor a fallen king or a revered ancestor. Historians remain divided on the origins of this practice. Some argue it's an ancient funerary rite, a way to honor the tools that served countless generations of river folk. Others believe it's a symbolic act, intended to return the net's spirit to the river goddess who watches over their lives and livelihoods. The ritual encapsulates a profound respect for the interconnectedness of life and nature. Fringe theories suggest that burying the net was also a form of protection, perhaps against malevolent spirits believed to be unleashed during great floods, or as an early form of attempting to control or influence the river's cycles through symbolic sacrifice. No archaeological evidence conclusively supports these theories, but the legend persists, vivid and unyielding, passed down in whispered stories and measured songs. As the elder describes the flood that stole the stars, you close your eyes and imagine a night when the sky was swallowed in darkness, and the river carried away not just water, but hope itself. The burial of the net was meant to seal that loss, to invite restoration, to signal that life would endure beyond catastrophe. The fishermen produce a replica of the crescent mound carefully shaped from earth, smooth stones, and woven reeds where the net rests beneath. You feel the weight of history pressing down on the scene, both physical and spiritual, as if you can sense the pulse of countless hands who have performed this ritual before you. You ask whether anyone has ever dared to dig the net up, to disturb this sacred resting place. The elder's eyes darken. No one dares, he replies firmly. To disturb the net is to disturb the river's balance, to invite misfortune upon the village. The night air carries a faint chill. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls mournfully, a lonely echo that seems to carry the sorrow and hope of generations. You realize the net is more than a mere tool or legend. It is a vessel for memory, loss, and renewal. A symbol of the enduring relationship between the people and the river that sustains them. And beneath the crescent mound, the river waits patient, watchful, eternal. The air shifts as the fishermen prepare a net baited with fermented grain, its flat bottom resting heavy in the hands of the eldest among them. They call it the belly snagger net, a name whispered with a mix of respect and wariness. This net is only set during those rare nights when the moon turns a deep, rusty orange, an event tied to the river's slow breath and ancient omens. You watch as the net is lowered with careful precision into a shallow cove, the grain releasing a sweet, sour scent that drifts softly over the water's surface. The fishermen say this bait confuses the belly snaggers, a notoriously slippery fish that's as clever as it is elusive. These fish, known for snatching bait and escaping nets, are said to respond differently to moonlight's changing hues. Historians note that baiting nets with fermented grain is one of the oldest fishing methods documented along the Nile. But the connection to the moon's color remains a subject of debate. Some scholars argue that the orange moon's appearance signals a shift in fish behavior or river chemistry, while others believe it's purely coincidental. Rooted in long-standing local lore, the fisherman's ritual suggests a deep, practical knowledge intertwined with superstition. They whisper of the belly snaggers as more than fish, sometimes spirits, sometimes tricksters, always a challenge. One elder laughs quietly, saying, "They're smarter than any of us, and they know the river's secrets." As you lean closer, the fermented scent becomes stronger, tangling with the earthy aroma of the riverbank. The net is set in place, and the men retreat silently to wait. Minutes stretch like hours, the moon hanging low and heavy in the sky. Then, a sudden splash breaks the stillness, a swift, darting movement in the water. The net tugs lightly, then harder, as if wrestling with an unseen force. The fishermen gather, pulling the net slowly. Inside, several belly snaggers glisten with scales that catch the moon's orange glow, their movements wild but trapped. you notice how their eyes flash with something almost human cunning. Defiance. You ask if they believe the fish have souls. The elder's gaze lingers on the catch. In this river, everything does. He replies, scholars remain divided on the belly snaggers, their existence blurring lines between biology and mythology. Some classify them as a species of catfish. Others think they're a collective name for any fish caught during orange moons, wrapped in layers of story and meaning. As the net is emptied and reset, you feel the river's pulse quicken, an ancient rhythm of challenge and respect, of life taken and life honored. The belly snaggers are released back into the water with care, their freedom a reminder that not all catches are meant to be kept. The orange moon dips lower, painting the river with fading light. As you absorb the night's lessons in patience, respect, and the mysteries beneath the surface, you watch as the fishermen prepare for another unique ritual, casting their nets only along the river's crescent-shaped bends, precisely timed with the moon's phases. Tonight, under a faint waxing crescent, the elders spread their nets along these curved riverbanks, following what they call the moonlight maps. No written charts guide this practice. Instead, it's an oral tradition passed down for centuries, blending geometry, lunar observation, and instinct. The fishermen believe that during certain moon phases, the river's shape and the moon's light align in patterns that lead to the richest catches. These crescent bends, they say, are nature's hidden fish traps, where currents swirl and fish gather in quiet eddies. You wonder whether this is myth or an early form of geometry-based fishing. Scholars debate whether the fishermen intuitively understood proto-geometry and lunar cycles, or if the crescent-shaped bends and moonlight patterns are symbolic overlays onto their practice. One elder explains that when the moon casts its sliver of light just so, shadows and reflections create shapes that guide the nets perfectly. It's like the river is drawing us a map, he says softly. The fishermen position their nets along these bends with care, placing them exactly where moon shadows fall. You notice the interplay of light and dark on the water's surface, the gentle curves echoing the moon's own shape. The silence feels sacred and charged with expectation. This method seems to combine art and science, an ancient blend of observation and reverence. It's a slow, deliberate dance between water and light, where timing is everything. The fishermen's practiced hands move almost without thought, guided by memory and the subtle changes in the moon's glow. As the nets settle, you catch the faintest glimpse of shimmering scales breaking the water surface. The catch here is said to be different fish that feed on the insects stirred by moonlit waters. Shimmering with a subtle glow of their own, you feel the deep connection between the river's curves and the moon's crescent. A reminder that sometimes nature's secrets are hidden in shapes and light rather than words. The fishermen pull their nets later, smiling quietly at the bounty. Their faith in the moonlight maps remains unshaken, even as scholars continue to debate their origins and purpose. Some researchers suggest this practice may reflect one of humanity's earliest examples of applied geometry, where intuition and environmental observation combine to create efficient fishing techniques. As you stand among them, you realize that fishing is not just about survival. Here it's about reading the language of the world, written in shadows, shapes, and lunar light. It's a dialogue between the river, the moon, and the people, carried on through time by the soft splash of nets and the quiet songs of the night. You notice the fishermen pause, lowering their nets in reverence as the moon edges toward the third quarter, a phase that is, strangely, taboo in these parts. The night air grows thick with quiet tension, and you sense the weight of stories hanging between the reeds like fog settling on the water's surface. The fishermen whisper of vanished boats and nets that seem to fish themselves. Eerie tales pass down in hushed voices, each story laced with a mixture of awe and fear. You ask why the third quarter is avoided with such seriousness. The elder's eyes darken, the lines on his face deepening as he leans closer. It is a time when the river holds its breath, he says, voice low and steady, when shadows lengthen beyond what eyes can see, and the usual rules do not apply. This lunar phase, when the moon appears half-lit but waning, is said to be a liminal time, a boundary between light and darkness. Life and death, known in local lore as the shadow moon. Fishermen claim that during this period, nets cast into the river might drift alone, as if guided by unseen hands, or disappear entirely, swallowed by the water's depths without a trace. Historians remain puzzled. Physical evidence to substantiate these tales is scarce or non-existent, yet oral traditions among Nubian communities are rich with warnings about fishing during the third quarter moon. Some scholars suggest this taboo may relate to ancient beliefs about spirits crossing between worlds, or it may be a practical caution linked to dangerous river currents or predator activity that historically coincide with this lunar phase. The fishermen share stories of boats that vanished without a trace, of men who went out to fish and returned with nothing but silence. There's the tale of a fisherman who cast his net during a third quarter moon, only to find it empty, yet the net would return to the shore covered in strange markings the next day. Another story tells of a young boy who followed his father's boat at night, only to see the vessel fade like mist into the river's depths, never to be found. Whether myth or memory, these accounts have shaped the community's relationship with the river profoundly. The taboo surrounding this phase is more than superstition. It's a living, breathing part of the fisherman's culture and identity. You feel the night's pulse quicken as the third quarter moon climbs higher, its pale, cold light casting ghostly reflections on the water's surface. The nets are lowered only to be raised immediately empty. The fishermen speak little, their movements cautious, their eyes scanning the dark, restless river. You sense a collective respect and fear for this phase, as if the river itself signals to be left alone. The tension in the air is almost tangible, a silent acknowledgement that some moments in the lunar cycle demand patience, humility, and silence. There's ongoing debate among scholars about whether this fear is rooted in natural phenomena, such as shifting tides, increased predator activity, or treacherous currents, or if it's a deep-seated cultural imprint handed down through generations. Some fringe theories have proposed that the third quarter moon was a designated time for ritual rest, when fishing paused to honor the unseen forces of the Nile and the mysteries lurking beneath its surface. As the third quarter moon arcs overhead, pale and distant, the fishermen retreat to the shore, their nets dry and empty, their hearts heavy with age-old caution. Around a small fire, the flickering flames mirror the moon's waning light, casting long shadows that seem to dance with the river's ancient secrets. The river flows on deep, mysterious, and ever watchful, carrying stories of loss and survival, faith and fear. Beneath the quiet gaze of the shadow moon, the youngest fishermen gather around the flickering fire, their faces dancing with shadows under the vast, star-filled sky. Tonight marks the beginning of the moonless apprentice test, a rite of passage steeped in centuries of tradition. The moon has vanished completely, leaving the world cloaked in near-total darkness. For these boys, tonight is a journey into the unknown, one that will decide whether they are ready to step into the river's ancient rhythm as full-fledged fishermen. You watch as the eldest among the elders outlines the challenge. The apprentices must navigate the reed-lined banks without the moon's guidance, relying solely on the subtle sounds of the river. The splash of water, the rustling of reeds, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Their task is to cast the blind net a net without the usual moon phase markings, and return with at least one fish or a story worthy of respect. Historians note that initiation rites involving darkness and sensory deprivation are common across many cultures worldwide. These rites symbolize a passage from innocence to knowledge, a confrontation with fear, and a transformation of identity. The Nubian moonless apprentice test is unique, deeply connected to the rhythms of the river and the moon's absence, reflecting a profound trust in nature's quiet signals rather than visual cues. Some fringe anthropologists suggest this rite also served a highly practical purpose, training young fishermen to rely on non-visual senses in the often treacherous nighttime environment. Moonlight could betray a fisherman's position to predators or rival clans. Learning to move unseen and hear the river's whispers was vital for survival. As the apprentices set out, the river seems to hold its breath. You hear the soft splash of nets hitting water, the whisper of cautious footsteps on damp earth, and the quiet murmur of prayers uttered under breath. The boys move with tentative confidence, each step a lesson in patience, awareness, and trust. Minutes stretch like hours as the night deepens, Then, from the darkened riverbank, a faint cry of triumph pierces the silence. A fish caught, a life affirmed. The apprentice emerges, cradling a shimmering catch, eyes wide with wonder, pride, and relief. The elder nods solemnly, welcoming the boy into the brotherhood of fishermen. The test is not simply about skill, but about becoming part of the river's ancient heartbeat, learning to listen when the world falls silent, and to trust instincts over sight. You feel the weight of this moment, the passing of knowledge, the unbroken chain of tradition, and the enduring mystery of the moonless night. As dawn edges the horizon, you realize that in the absence of light, the river reveals its deepest lessons: trust, humility, and the quiet strength of those who know how to see without seeing. The night deepens into a serene stillness as you settle beneath a carefully woven net stretched taut across a frame of driftwood, resting upon the cool, damp earth beside the river. This net is unlike any you have seen before, known as the storytelling net. It is a living archive of the fisherman's histories, hopes, and hardships. Each knot, loop, and pattern is carefully crafted, bearing stories older than the flowing Nile itself, weaving together generations of knowledge and memory. Your fingers trace the coarse, weathered cords, feeling the texture of lives long past. Each knot is a word, each pattern a phrase, the flood tides that rose unexpectedly, the silent betrayals whispered under the watchful gaze of the crescent moon, the storms that turned calm waters into raging torrents, and the restless spirits said to haunt the river's darkest bends. The fishermen believe tying these knots is a sacred ritual, a way to honor their ancestors, to keep the river's stories alive, breathing with every thread. Historians have long recognized knot tying as a powerful mnemonic tool, evident in ancient maritime cultures and in the intricate quipus of the Incas. In Nubia, these nets transcend their practical purpose, becoming vessels of oral history, mythology, and survival wisdom woven into tangible form. An elder's hand rests on a complex crescent-shaped pattern. He tells you it marks the night the river dramatically altered its course after a devastating flood, an event that reshaped lives and land alike. Another tight knot recounts a fierce rivalry between neighboring clans, a feud almost destroying their community before peace was brokered beneath the tranquil glow of a full moon. As your fingers wander across the net's stories, you feel the weight of generations, their triumphs, losses, resilience, and unwavering connection to the river's pulse. This net is not merely a tool, it is a living chronicle of human endurance, faith, and relationship with the natural world. Slowly, the moon dips below the horizon, its gentle glow fading like a whispered farewell. The fishermen begin carefully to unravel the net, releasing these woven tales back to the river and the cool night breeze. The stories seem to float away on currents and whispers, destined to live anew in the hearts of those who listen. Lying back on the soft earth, your eyes grow heavy, but your heart feels full. The moon watches silently as the river carries these stories forward, timeless, endless, eternal. You realize that you have been welcomed into a tradition as ancient as the Nile itself, a sacred dance between human and water, between memory and myth, between night and light. Now, dim the lights, perhaps turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and rest knowing you have become part of the river's endless story where water meets sky. And stories are caught and released like fish on the tide. Slow your breath now and feel the gentle pulse of the river beneath the quiet tapestry of stars above. The night whispers lullabies in every rustling reed, every shimmering fish, and every knot tied by hands long gone but never forgotten. The moon's soft glow fades slowly, wrapping the world in a calm, soothing embrace. Here, beneath woven nets and ancient skies, time flows softly and gently. You are part of the endless story where water meets sky, where moonlight dances on the ripples, where stories are caught and released like fish on the tide. The river's gentle song hums softly in your ears, a melody of patience, resilience, and quiet wisdom. Let the rhythm of the Nile carry you deeper into rest. Imagine your thoughts drifting like leaves floating downstream, carried by the soft current. Feel the cool night air brush against your skin, the gentle murmurs of nature blending into a serene symphony designed to cradle your mind. You are held in the river's timeless embrace, a place where past and present converge, where every whispered story floats gently into the future. Good night, dear listener. May your dreams be as tranquil as the Nile's moonlit waters, filled with stories waiting patiently to be told when you awake.